The small research ship fell through the atmosphere like a broken bird. Inside, Tae-sung gripped his seat as alarms screamed around him. Next to him, Hana worked frantically at the controls, trying to slow their descent. The navigation system had failed 3 hours ago, and now they were crashing on a planet they knew nothing about. "Brace for impact!" Hana shouted. The ship hit hard. Metal screamed and twisted. Tae-sung's head snapped forward. Then everything went dark. When he woke up, his entire body ached. He could smell smoke and burning plastic. Tae-sung unbuckled himself and looked around the damaged cockpit. Hana was slumped in her seat, blood running down her face from a deep cut above her eye. "Hana!" He shook her gently. She groaned, but did not wake up. Tae-sung heard sounds outside the ship. Clicking sounds. Scraping sounds. Then voices, but not human voices. These were high-pitched and musical, like wind chimes made of crystal. The ship's door had been torn off in the crash. Through the opening, Tae-sung saw them. They looked like giant insects, standing upright like humans. They had 4 arms each, covered in shell-like armor that shimmered with colors between blue and purple. Their large, compound eyes reflected the dim red light of the setting sun. Tae-sung reached for his weapon, but one of the creatures held up 2 of its hands in what seemed like a peaceful gesture. It spoke, and somehow the translation device in his ear still worked. "Please, do not fear. We mean no harm. Your vessel crashed on our world. We are the Kelth. I am Elder Vriss." Tae-sung relaxed slightly. "My partner is hurt. She needs help." Elder Vriss moved closer. Its movement surprisingly graceful. It looked at Hana with what might have been concern, though Tae-sung found it hard to read expressions on such an alien face. "We have medical knowledge. Please let us help. We will bring you to our settlement." Tae-sung had no choice. He could not help Hana alone. He nodded. The Kelth worked quickly and carefully. They built a stretcher and lifted Hana with surprising gentleness. Tae-sung followed them through a landscape that made his heart sink. The plants were withered and dying. The ground was cracked and dry. The red sun above looked wrong, too dim and too dark. The Kelth settlement was a collection of dome-shaped buildings that had seen better days. Many were damaged or partially collapsed. The Kelth population seemed small. Tae-sung saw maybe a few hundred individuals, and they all looked thin and tired. They brought Hana to what seemed to be a medical facility. Elder Vriss personally attended to her wound, using tools and medicines that looked advanced despite their age. Other Kelth worked on cleaning and stitching the cut on Hana's head. "Your son," Tae-sung said, watching them work. "It looks sick." Elder Vriss's antennae drooped, which Tae-sung somehow understood as sadness. "Yes, our star is dying. It began 30 of your years ago. We do not know why. Our scientists tried everything, but we do not have the technology to save it. In 2 generations, maybe less, our world will be frozen and dark. The Kelth will be no more." Tae-sung felt a chill run through him. "I am sorry. That is terrible." "It is our fate," Elder Vriss said simply. "But we are still here now, and you need our help today. That is what matters." Over the next week, Tae-sung learned more about the Kelth and their dying world. Despite facing extinction, they shared what little they had. They gave the humans food from their dwindling supplies. They provided shelter in one of their better buildings. They worked day and night to help repair the damaged ship. Hana recovered slowly. She had suffered a concussion along with her head wound. The Kelth used their last medical supplies to ensure she healed properly. When Tae-sung tried to refuse, saying they needed those supplies for themselves, Elder Vriss simply said, "A life in need is a life in need. We cannot turn away from that." Tae-sung watched the Kelth children playing in the dusty streets. They looked thin and weak, but they still played. Their parents watched with expressions that might have been love and sorrow mixed together. Everyone knew they were the last generations. One evening, Tae-sung sat with Elder Vriss on a hill overlooking the settlement. The dying sun painted everything in shades of dark red and purple. "Why?" Tae-sung asked. "Why help us when you have so little, when you are facing the end?" Elder Vriss was quiet for a long moment. "Because kindness is not something you give only when you have plenty. Kindness is what defines us, especially when we have nothing. If we lose our kindness, we have already died, even if our hearts still beat." Those words hit Tae-sung hard. He thought about his own people, about humanity spread across the stars. Would they be so generous in the face of extinction? He was not sure. 2 weeks after the crash, the ship was ready. Hana was healed enough to travel. The Kelth had given them enough fuel to reach the nearest human outpost, though Tae-sung suspected it was fuel they could not spare. Before leaving, Tae-sung stood before Elder Vriss and the other Kelth who had helped them. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured the gratitude he felt. "We will not forget this," Tae-sung said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, Elder Vriss. Humanity will remember what you did for us. We will remember that when you were dying, you chose to save strangers. We will remember." Elder Vriss's antennae moved in what might have been a smile. "Then we will live on in memory at least. That is more than we hoped for. Travel safely, Tae-sung of the humans." As the ship lifted off, Tae-sung looked down at the dying world below. He made a silent vow. Somehow, some way, he would make sure humanity knew about this. The Kelth deserved more than to be forgotten. Hana, still weak but recovering, touched his arm. "You really think anyone will care? It was 50 years ago that anyone from Earth even came out this far. We are just researchers, nobody important." Tae-sung looked at her with fierce determination. "They will care. I will make them care. These people saved our lives when they could not save their own world. That means something. That has to mean something." The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Kelvar Prime behind. But Tae-sung kept his eyes on the rear viewer until the dying red sun was just a faint dot among billions of other stars. He did not know if his promise would matter. He did not know if humanity would listen, but he knew he had to try. The Kelth had shown him what it meant to be truly good, truly kind, even in the face of the ultimate end. That was a debt that demanded to be repaid. Admiral Sungmin had trouble sleeping these days. At 73 years old, he had seen more of the galaxy than most humans ever would. He had fought in 2 wars, negotiated 3 peace treaties, and helped establish colonies on 12 different worlds. But tonight, like many recent nights, he lay awake thinking about a dusty old file he had found in the archives. The report was 50 years old. It detailed an emergency landing on an unknown world, rescue by an alien species called the Kelth, and safe return to human space. The file was marked as closed, no follow-up required. But something about it bothered Sungmin. He had read it 5 times now. The report mentioned that the Kelth were facing extinction. Their son was dying, and they had used their last medical supplies to save a human named Hana. They had given fuel they could not spare to help the humans leave. Sungmin got out of bed and pulled up the file again on his tablet. He read the final entry, written by Tae-sung before his death 20 years ago. It was a personal note, not part of the official report. "I made them a promise. I tried to get help for them, but nobody would listen. The Kelth saved our lives, and we left them to die. I failed them. I hope someday someone will read this and do what I could not." Sungmin felt something twist in his chest, anger maybe, or shame. He checked the current date, 50 years since the report. That meant the Kelth sun had been dying for 80 years now. If they were still alive, they were running out of time. He made a decision. He would bring this to the Coalition Council. 3 days later, Sung Min stood in the Great Council Chamber on Earth. 200 representatives from human colonies across the galaxy sat in their seats, waiting to hear why he had called an emergency session. "I want to talk about a debt," Sung Min began. "A debt that humanity owes and has not paid." He told them about Tai Sung and Hana. He told them about the Kelth, who had nothing but gave everything. He told them about a dying species that had chosen kindness over survival. A representative named Yuri stood up. She was young, efficient, and practical. "Admiral, with respect, this happened 50 years ago. The Kelth are probably already extinct. We cannot save everyone in the galaxy. We have our own problems." Sung Min had expected this. He played a video file. It was old and grainy, but clear enough. It showed Elder Vriss speaking to Tae Sung. "A life in need is a life in need. We cannot turn away from that." Then it showed the Kelth children, playing in the shadow of their dying sun. Thin and weak, but still playing, still hoping. The council chamber was silent. "They saved our people," Sung Min said quietly. "When they were facing the end of everything, they chose to help strangers. They used medicine they needed for themselves. They gave fuel they could not spare. And what did we do? We said thank you and left them to die." Another representative stood. His name was Daeho, and he represented the outer colonies. "What are you asking us to do?" "Admiral, I am asking us to remember. I am asking us to be worthy of the kindness we were shown. I am asking us to try." The vote was not immediate. There were debates, arguments, practical concerns about cost and resources and whether it was even possible to save a dying star. But something had changed in that council chamber. The representatives had seen those Kelth children. They had heard Elder Vriss's words. The story leaked to the public. A journalist named Ji Woo got hold of the report and the video. She published it on the largest news network in human space. Within hours, it was everywhere. The human reaction was volcanic. Messages flooded the council. Protests formed, but they were not protesting against action. They were demanding it. "They saved our people and we abandoned them?" This is who we are. This is what humanity stands for. We owe them. We owe them everything. Something deep in the human psyche had been triggered. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the most advanced, but they had one trait that seemed unique. They never forgot a debt. When someone helped them, they remembered, and they paid back, always with interest. Ji Woo interviewed people across human space. An old woman on Mars said, "My grandmother always told me, you never forget the hand that helps you up. Never." A young engineer on Europa said, "They used their last medicine to save a stranger. That is not something you walk away from." The pressure on the council became overwhelming, but it was not angry pressure. It was determined pressure. Humanity wanted to pay its debt. 10 days after Sung Min's speech, the Coalition Council voted. The result was unanimous. Project Remembrance was approved. Humanity would attempt to save the Kelth no matter the cost. Yuri, who had argued against it, voted yes. When asked why she changed her mind, she said, "I watched the video again. I watched those children playing, and I realized that if we walk away from this, we become something less than we should be. The Kelth showed us the best of what intelligent beings can be. We need to show them the same." The news reached every human colony within a day. The response was immediate and powerful. Donations poured in, scientists volunteered, engineers offered their time. Even the poorest colonies sent what they could. Sung Min stood in his office, watching the news reports of humans preparing for the largest project in their history. A young officer named Subin approached him. "Sir, we are getting messages from other alien species. They are asking why we are doing this. They do not understand. The Kelth are not our allies. We have no trade agreements with them. They gave us nothing of strategic value. From a practical standpoint, this makes no sense. Sungmin smiled. Tell them that humans have a saying, "We remember those who helped us when we had nothing to offer in return." That memory is worth more than any trade agreement. But sir, some of them think we are foolish. They say we are wasting resources on a lost cause. Let them think what they want, Sungmin replied. They will understand eventually. When you help a human, you create a bond. That bond does not fade with time. It does not weaken with distance. The Kelth saved 2 of our people 50 years ago, and today we will move heaven and earth to save them. That is who we are. Across human space, the work began. Scientists started researching stellar rejuvenation. Engineers began designing massive construction projects. Diplomats prepared first contact protocols. The entire human civilization was mobilizing. Jiwoo broadcast from Earth, standing in front of the coalition building. Today, humanity declared that gratitude is not just a feeling. It is a force, it is a promise, and it is a debt that will be paid. The Kelth saved 2 humans when they could barely save themselves. Now, all of humanity will try to save the Kelth. This is Project Remembrance. This is who we are. In his quiet office, Sungmin looked at the old photo of Tae-sung and Hana standing with Elder Vriss. The photo had been taken just before the humans left Kelvar Prime. "We heard you, Tae-sung," Sungmin whispered. "You kept your promise. You made us remember. Now we will keep ours." The message was sent to every ship, every colony, every outpost in human space. It was simple and clear. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not abandon those who helped us. We are coming. Dr. Binwoo stared at the data and wanted to cry. He had spent 3 months studying the Kelth Sun, running simulations, testing theories. Every single one ended the same way: failure. "It is impossible," he said to his team. "The star is too far gone. Even if we could somehow inject new fuel into it, the core is collapsing. In maybe 10 years, it will become a white dwarf. Nothing can stop that." His assistant, a young physicist named Jin Ho, shook his head. "There has to be a way. We promised them." "Promises do not change the laws of physics," Binwoo said tiredly. "I want to save them. God, I want to save them. But wanting something does not make it possible." The team sat in discouraged silence. They were the best scientific minds humanity had, and they were stumped. Around them, the research station orbited a safe distance from the dying Kelth sun. They could see it through the windows, dim and red and wrong. Binwoo thought about giving up. Then he thought about the video everyone had seen, those Kelth children playing in the dust. Elder Vriss saying that kindness mattered even at the end. He could not give up. Not yet. "Let us think differently," he said. "We cannot save the star. We know that. But what if we do not save it? What if we replace it?" The team looked at him like he had gone crazy. Jin Ho spoke carefully. "Doctor, are you suggesting we build an artificial sun?" "Not exactly. What if we build something that does what a sun does? Not a star, but a network, a system. Something that provides heat and light and radiation in the right amounts." An engineer named Sora, who had been quiet until now, suddenly sat up straight. "A shell." "No, not a shell. A net, a web. We surround the star with satellites, thousands of them. Each one is a fusion reactor. They work together to supplement what the star cannot provide anymore." Binwoo felt a spark of hope. "We cannot stop the star from dying, but we can build something around it that keeps the planets alive anyway." "The energy requirements would be massive," Jin Ho said. "We are talking about replicating the output of a star." "Not the full output," Sora corrected. "Just enough to keep the planets in the habitable zone warm enough for life. The star is still providing some energy. We just need to make up the difference." They worked through the night, running calculations, building models. It was still impossible, but it was a different kind of impossible. It was engineering impossible rather than physics impossible. And engineers could overcome impossible if given enough time and resources. 3 days later, Bin Wu presented the plan to Admiral Sung Min. He called it the Stellar Renewal Array. It would require building more than 5,000 massive fusion satellites, each the size of a small moon. They would orbit the Kelth sun in a carefully designed pattern, creating an artificial energy shell. "How long will it take?" Sung Min asked. 15 years, maybe 20. We have never built anything this large. How much will it cost? Bin Wu showed him the numbers. Sung Min went pale. It was more resources than some entire sectors produced in a decade. "It will bankrupt several colonies," Sung Min said quietly. "I know. We could build 10 new colonies for this cost, or fund medical research that could save millions of human lives." "I know that too." Sung Min looked at the plans for a long time. Then he nodded. "Do it. We made a promise." While the scientists worked on the technical problems, Captain Yunji prepared for the most important mission of her life. She would lead the first contact team back to Kelvar Prime. Nobody had spoken to the Kelth in 50 years. Nobody even knew if they were still alive. Her ship, the Remembrance, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kelvar system. The sensors immediately found Kelvar Prime. The planet was still there, but the readings were not good. The temperature had dropped significantly. Most of the water was frozen. "Life signs?" Yunji asked. "Detecting some heat signatures in equatorial regions. Not many. Maybe a few million individuals, concentrated in a few settlements." They had survived. Barely, but they had survived. The Remembrance entered orbit around Kelvar Prime. Yunji sent a message in the Kelth language, using the translation database from Tae Sung's old report. "This is Captain Yunji of the human ship Remembrance. We have returned. We have not forgotten." The response took several minutes. When it came, the voice was old and tired, but the translator still worked. "This is Elder Kavris, successor to Vriss who has passed. We did not expect to hear from humans again. Why have you returned?" "To keep a promise. To repay a debt. We are here to save your son." There was a long silence. Then, "That is not possible." "We believe it is. May we come down and speak with you?" The landing was difficult. Most of the planet was frozen wasteland now. The Kelth had retreated to a region near the equator where the temperature was barely warm enough for survival. Their once great cities were empty and dark. The settlement they found had maybe 3 million Kelth living in structures that were clearly designed for many times that number. They looked thin and weak, but they were still alive. Elder Kavris met them at the landing site. The elder was old, with parts of the shell armor cracked and dulled with age, but the eyes were still bright and intelligent. Yunji bowed in the human way, then attempted the Kelth gesture of respect that Tae Sung had described in his notes. Kavris's antennae moved in what might have been surprise. "You know our customs. We studied everything we could about your people. Tae Sung's reports were very detailed." "Tae Sung. I was young when he was here. Elder Vriss spoke of him often before passing. Vriss said that Tae Sung promised humanity would remember." "We did remember," Yunji said, "and now we are here to help." She showed Kavris the plans for the Stellar Renewal Array. The elder studied them in silence, using all 4 hands to manipulate the holographic display. "This would require enormous resources. Resources you could use for your own people. You used your last medicine for Hana. You gave fuel you could not spare for Tae Sung. We learned from you." Kavris's antenna drooped. "We are so few now. 3 million, maybe less. Once we were billions. Is it worth such effort for so few?" Yunji knelt down to be at eye level with the elder. Every life matters. You taught us that. When Taesung asked Elder Vriss why you helped when you had nothing, Vriss said that kindness defines us. You saved 2 lives when you could barely save yourselves. We will save 3 million because we can, because it is right, because you showed us what right looks like. The old Kelth was silent for a long moment. Then Kavris made a sound that the translator rendered as crying. We thought we would die forgotten. We thought our last generations would see only the cold and dark. You cannot know what this means. You gave us hope when we needed it, Yunji said gently. Now we give it back. The news spread through the Kelth settlement quickly. Humans were here. Humans were going to try to save them. The reaction was shock, disbelief, and then something the Kelth had not felt in generations. Hope. Yunji set up a permanent base on Kelvar Prime. Her team began detailed surveys of the system, working with Kelth scientists who still had knowledge to share. Construction ships began arriving, massive vessels carrying equipment and workers. In orbit, the first pieces of the stellar renewal array began to take shape. The work would take years, but it had begun. Humanity was keeping its promise. Project engineer Hyun Tae floated in his work pod, watching the construction through the reinforced window. 50 massive satellites hung in space around him, each one the size of a city. Behind them, hundreds more were in various stages of assembly, and this was just one of 40 construction zones. 15 years. That was how long they had been working. 15 years of 12-hour shifts, of solving impossible problems, of building something that had never been built before. Zone 7 reports Fusion Satellite 312 is ready for final testing, his assistant reported. Hyun Tae checked his records. They had completed 3,800 satellites so far. They needed 5,200 total. They were getting close. He thought about the first year, when everything went wrong. 3 satellites had exploded during testing. 2 construction platforms had collided. They had lost 17 workers in various accidents. Each death hit hard. But they kept going. The Kelth were depending on them. Below, on Kelvar Prime, things had changed dramatically. The human workers needed supplies, housing, food. They had built entire cities to support the construction effort. The Kelth had watched in amazement as human ships arrived daily with more materials, more workers, more equipment. And something unexpected had happened. Humans and Kelth had started working together. Dr. Mina, a human psychologist assigned to study the cultural exchange, recorded her observations in her daily log. She sat in a small office in the human settlement on Kelvar Prime, watching through her window as a mixed group of humans and Kelth worked together on a garden project. The Kelth are remarkable, she spoke into her recorder. They teach us patience. They show us how to find beauty in small things. A Kelth named Tivek spent 3 hours today teaching human children how to arrange stones in patterns that represent different emotions. The children loved it. She paused, watching a human engineer named Dae Ho showing a young Kelth how to use a welding tool. But I think we are teaching them something too. The Kelth had accepted their extinction. They were at peace with it. Now they are learning to hope again, to fight again. A Kelth elder told me yesterday that humans have given them something they thought they had lost forever, a future. The cultural exchange went deeper than anyone expected. Kelth philosophy started spreading through the human workers. The concept of aid without expectation became a common phrase. Humans who had lived on Kelvar Prime for years started adopting Kelth customs, Kelth art, Kelth ways of thinking. And the Kelth learned from humans, too. They learned about determination, about refusing to accept defeat. They learned that sometimes the right thing to do was to rage against impossible odds. In the massive shipyards orbiting Kelvar Prime, a Kelth engineer named Sevik worked alongside Hyun Tae's team. Sevik was young by Kelth standards, only 30 years old. The elder had never expected to see old age. Now, with the array nearing completion, Sevek allowed itself to imagine growing old. "Why do humans do this?" Sevek asked Hyun-tae one day. "I have been working with you for 10 years now. I still do not fully understand." Hyun-tae considered the question while his hands moved automatically through the familiar motions of his work. "Did you ever have someone help you when you really needed it?" "Yes, several times." "And how did it make you feel?" Sevek's antenna moved thoughtfully. "Grateful, honored, obligated." That obligation, that feeling of owing something, humans carry that forever. My grandmother used to say that a debt of kindness is the only debt that grows with time instead of shrinking. The longer you take to pay it back, the more you owe. But our elders helped 2 humans. You are saving millions of us. This is not balanced. Hyun-tae smiled. That is exactly the point. You helped when you had nothing. That makes the debt bigger, not smaller. If you had been rich and powerful, helping us would have cost you little. But you were dying, and you still chose kindness. That kind of debt can never truly be repaid. We can only try to come close. Year 14 of construction arrived. The array was nearly complete. 5,000 satellites now orbited the Kelth sun in a carefully designed pattern. Each one was a massive fusion reactor capable of supplementing the dying star's energy output. Together, they formed a network that would keep the Kelth system habitable. Dr. Bin-woo, now 70 years old and gray-haired, checked the final calculations one more time. Everything looked good. In theory, it would work. But theory and practice were different things. "Are we ready?" Admiral Sung-min asked. He had aged, too, but had insisted on being present for the activation. "As ready as we will ever be," Bin-woo replied. "We have run every simulation 1,000 times, but we are about to do something that has never been done before. There are no guarantees." On Kelvar Prime, the entire Kelth population gathered in the open spaces of their settlement. Humans stood among them, friends and colleagues after 15 years of working together. The activation would be visible from the surface, they had been told. The sky would change. Elder Kavris, now very old and frail, stood with Captain Yunji. The old Kelth had become close friends with the human captain over the years. "Whatever happens," Kavris said, "you have already given us so much. 15 years ago, we were just waiting to die. Now we have hope. We have new friends. We have learned that we are not alone in the universe. That is a gift beyond measure." Yunji squeezed one of Kavris's hands gently. "It is not a gift. It is a repayment, and it is not finished yet." In orbit, Hyun-tae initiated the activation sequence. 5,000 satellites began their fusion reactions simultaneously. The energy output was carefully controlled, designed to supplement the dying star without overwhelming the system. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The dim red sun seemed to brighten. The satellites themselves began to glow, forming a ring of brilliant light around the star. The combined light reached out to the planets, warming them for the first time in decades. On Kelvar Prime, the Kelth looked up at their sky. The sun was still red, still dying, but now it was surrounded by a ring of human-made stars. The light was warmer, brighter, life-giving. Many Kelth made the sound that meant crying, but these were tears of joy, of relief, of gratitude so deep it had no words. Yunji felt Kavris lean against her, the old Kelth's shell trembling. "Our son has a crown," Kavris whispered, "a crown of hope made by human hands." The data started coming in, surface temperature rising, ice beginning to melt, plant life responding to the increased light and warmth. The array was working. Dr. Bin-woo watched the readings with tears running down his face. 15 years of work, hundreds of billions in resources, thousands of workers. And it had worked. They had done the impossible. But as Hyun-tae looked at the glowing array surrounding the Kelth sun, he knew this was only the beginning. The array needed maintenance, monitoring, constant adjustment. Humanity was committed now, for as long as the Kelth needed them. And that was fine. That was exactly what they wanted. A debt of kindness was not something you paid once and forgot. It was a relationship. It was a promise that lasted forever. Ambassador Wu Jin stepped off the shuttle onto Kelvar Prime and smiled. The air was warm, not cold. The sky was blue, not the dark red he had seen in old photos. Plants grew everywhere, green and healthy. It had been 25 years since the stellar renewal array activated, and the planet had transformed. He was met by a young Kelth named Verna. Young by Kelth standards meant 50 years old. Verna had been born during the darkest times, when extinction seemed certain. Now Verna worked as a diplomat, helping coordinate between the growing Kelth population and their human partners. Ambassador, welcome. Elder Kavris is waiting for you. The Elder is very excited about your announcement. Wu Jin carried a data tablet that contained information that would change the Kelth civilization forever. Information that even he had trouble believing, and he had helped plan it. They walked through the Kelth capital city. It was nothing like the dying settlement Captain Yeunji had found decades ago. Buildings reached toward the sky. Markets bustled with activity. Kelth children played in parks, healthy and strong. The population had grown from 3 million to over 50 million in just 25 years, and it was growing faster every year. But Wu Jin knew the real surprise was not on Kelvar Prime. Elder Kavris waited in a garden, the same garden where Elder Vriss had once sat with Tae-sung. Kavris was ancient now, one of the last Kelth who remembered the dark times before the humans came. The Elder's shell was faded with age, but the eyes were still bright. Ambassador Wu Jin, it is always a pleasure. They sat together, and Wu Jin activated the data tablet. A holographic display showed the Kelvar system. Elder, you know that we have been conducting surveys of the outer planets in your system. Yes, looking for resources, I assumed. Not exactly. Wu Jin expanded the display. We found 4 planets in the outer system, dead worlds. No atmosphere, no life, nothing. We asked your permission to conduct experiments on them. I remember. We gave permission. What have you found? Wu Jin smiled. We have not found anything, Elder. We have made something. The holographic display changed, showing the 4 planets transformed. Atmospheres, oceans, continents, cities ready and waiting. We have terraformed them, Wu Jin said quietly. All 4. Each one is designed specifically for Kelth life. The atmosphere is perfect, the temperature is controlled, the plant life is seeded with species that will support Kelth nutrition. The cities are built to Kelth specifications. Kavris stared at the display, all 4 hands trembling. I do not understand. Why? Because 3 million Kelth saved 2 humans. Because you showed us what kindness really means. Because you deserve not just to survive, but to thrive. But the cost is paid gladly. Elder, humanity learned something from the Kelth. We learned that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats those who can benefit them, but how it treats those who have nothing to offer. You had nothing to offer us but kindness. That was everything. Wu Jin pulled up more information. The planets are ready now. We have transportation prepared. The Kelth population can expand across 5 worlds instead of 1. We estimate you can support a population of 10 billion within a century. The old Kelth was silent for a long time. Finally, Kavris spoke, and the translator captured the emotion in the voice. When Elder Vriss helped Tae-sung, Vriss never imagined this. We helped because it was right. We expected nothing in return. We know. That is why we must give everything in return. But Wu Jin was not finished. He pulled up another file. We are also sharing technology. medical advances that will extend Kelth lifespan, agricultural techniques that will increase food production, defensive systems to protect your worlds. You are giving us your secrets? We are sharing with our friends. The Kelth taught humanity a lesson about kindness. The least we can do is ensure that lesson survives for future generations. News of the terraformed world spread quickly. The Kelth reaction was overwhelming. Many could not believe it. Some thought it was a trick, though they could not imagine what humans would gain from such a trick. But most simply felt a gratitude so deep it changed how they saw the universe. The migration began within months. Kelth families volunteered to settle the new worlds. Each planet was named in the Kelth language: hope, renewal, gratitude, and friendship. Wu Jin attended the first settlement ceremony on the planet named Hope. He watched as Kelth families stepped onto a world that had been dead rock just 10 years ago and was now a paradise. Children ran through fields that humans had planted. Adults examined cities that humans had built but left empty for the Kelth to fill. A young Kelth couple approached him, carrying their infant child. "Ambassador, we want to thank you. Our child will grow up with a future, a real future. We have named our child Tae Sung after the human who started all of this." Wu Jin felt tears on his face. That would honor his memory greatly. Back on Earth, Dr. Mina published her final report on the Kelth-human relationship. She was old now, having spent 30 years studying the cultural exchange. Her report was read across human space and beyond. "We went to Kelvar Prime to repay a debt," she wrote. "We stayed because we found something precious. The Kelth showed us that survival is not an excuse to abandon kindness. They reminded us that how we treat others, especially when we have nothing to gain, defines who we are. But we showed them something too. We showed them that kindness is not weakness, that gratitude is a force that can reshape worlds, that a simple act of helping strangers can echo across decades and change the fate of civilizations. The Kelth saved 2 lives. We saved 3 million. But in truth, they saved us first. They saved us from becoming a species that forgets its debts, that ignores those who helped us, that values profit over principle." Other species in the galaxy watched the Kelth-human alliance with confusion at first, then understanding, then calculation. The practical species, the ones who measured every action by profit and strategic advantage, began to see humans in a new light. A species called the Torvan sent an ambassador to Earth. "We wish to understand," the ambassador said. "The Kelth gave you nothing of value, no technology, no resources, no strategic position, yet you have spent more saving them than most species spend on major wars. Why?" The human diplomat, a young woman named Subin, smiled. "The Kelth gave us something worth more than all of those things. They gave us kindness when they could not afford it. That is priceless, and it creates a bond stronger than any alliance based on mutual benefit. But what if the Kelth cannot repay you?" "Repay us?" Subin looked confused. "They already repaid us. They showed us who we want to be. They reminded us that the universe can be kind. That is payment enough." The Torvan ambassador left, still confused but thoughtful. The report sent back to the Torvan homeworld started a debate that would last for years. Other species began to reconsider how they viewed humans. Humans were not the strongest warriors, not the best scientists, not the richest traders. But they had one trait that made them unique. They never forgot who helped them. And they repaid kindness with everything they had. A century passed. The Kelvar system now held 8 billion Kelth spread across 5 thriving worlds. The stellar renewal array still functioned, maintained by joint Kelth-human crews. The alliance between the two species had become one of the strongest in the galaxy. On Kelvar Prime, in the same garden where 3 elders had now sat, a monument stood. It showed 3 figures, Tae Sung and Hana, standing beside Elder Vriss. The inscription was carved in both Celth and human languages. They gave us shelter when they had none to spare. They gave us medicine when they needed it themselves. They showed us kindness when they faced the end. We gave them hope. We gave them worlds. We gave them a future. This is the human way. This is the Celth way. This is what kindness creates. Below that, in smaller letters, was a quote from the last message Elder Vriss had sent before dying, a message found in the Celth archives and translated years later. I helped two strangers because it was right. I never imagined they would remember. I never imagined their entire species would come to save us. But now I understand. Humans do not forget. They do not abandon those who showed them kindness. If you ever meet a human in need, help them, for they will remember, and their gratitude can remake worlds. Ambassador Wu Jin, now 90 years old and near the end of his own life, visited the monument one last time. He touched the carved image of Tae Sung, the man he had never met but whose promise had changed everything. "We remembered," Wu Jin whispered. "We kept your promise. We paid the debt." A Celth child playing nearby noticed the old human. "Are you sad, Elder?" Wu Jin smiled. "No, little one. I am happy. Very happy." "Why?" "Because once, a long time ago, your people were kind to my people, and that kindness created all of this." He gestured at the thriving city, the healthy planet, the bright sun surrounded by its crown of stars. The child looked around, then back at Wu Jin. "My teacher says that humans and Celth will be friends forever because of what happened. Your teacher is right." "Why? Just because of one act of kindness?" Wu Jin knelt down to the child's level. "Never underestimate the power of kindness, little one. One act of kindness, given freely when it costs everything, can echo across time. It can change the fate of worlds. It can forge bonds that last forever. Your ancestors taught us that. We will never forget." The child ran off to play, and Wu Jin stood, watching the Celth children play under a sun that humans had saved. This was the legacy, not just the technology or the terraformed worlds or the alliance. The legacy was the lesson. Kindness matters, gratitude matters, and some debts are worth everything to repay. Across the galaxy, that lesson was spreading. Other species watched. They learned. They began to understand that humans were not just another species competing for resources and power. Humans were something different, something that remembered, that valued kindness above profit, that would move stars to help those who had helped them. And in understanding that, the galaxy began to change.